Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. It is another Wednesday night. The Lord has kept us and has blessed us to see through the hours of this day and to come to this present moment in time that we might consider the Word of God and its implications for our lives and our circumstances. That knowing what it is God wants us to be and to be like, we might pursue those ends that God might be glorified thereby. Let us pray. Eternal God, we are grateful to you for the blessings of this day and for this opportunity to assemble tonight in your house and in your name with your word before us. Speak to our hearts and our minds that we might understand what it is you have to say in these moments, that our lives might be pleasing in your sight, and that you might be glorified by what we say and do. In the name of Christ, our Savior and Lord, we pray. Amen. Come on in, Reverend. Come on in, Deaconess. We have been, for the last several weeks now, maybe as much as a month, in the book of Judges. And our trip through the book of Judges has been intended not as much to have us to study that part of Israel's history, but that we might examine that part of Israel's history for its implications for our time. We've been using as a theme in this time, beware of the undertow. The notion is that there are circumstances in our lives that, much like water in the oceans or in the sea, form whirlpools that have the capacity to pull under anything that may be on top of the water. And those whirlpools can be dangerous. I told you about a trip that I made recently. I think it was maybe Memorial Day weekend, I think it was, to Outer Banks, North Carolina. And that's the Saturday and Sunday when we were there were beautiful days. But Monday turned out to be a really horrific weather day. And as we drove between the dunes in that area, the sand dunes, and past the places where homes had been built and people had access to the waterfront, we noticed red flags that were flying, and the red flags were straight out in the wind. The wind was so high and the water was so rough, and those red signs are indicative of a bad time for swim. So, and there are signs, literal signs, that say, beware of the undertow. Undertow is dangerous because it carries with it the possibility of drowning. You get the power of that water can pull you under and hold you under until it drowns you or takes you out to sea, or whatever other negative thing could happen because of that. In the same way, we've used an illustration to suggest that there are events in life that pose similar traps for us, spiritual traps that have the power to rob us of our own sense of safety and security, and to carry us far away from the places that God would have us and the places that God would carry us. And so in the same way as near the Atlantic Ocean or another ocean, it makes sense to beware of the undertow. When we go about the living of our days, it makes sense for us to be aware of the kinds of things that can undo what God has done and is doing in us. And in the worst case, such things could take us to the place where they drown us spiritually, where we find ourselves losing our lives to the perils of sin. And so we've had a chance to walk with several of the judges in this time. We started in chapter 1, and last week I think we went through the first 15 verses, 15a of the 7th chapter. And tonight we'll resume our study of Judges in Judges chapter 7, verse 15b. And before we start there, we are, you may recognize that noticeably absent from us tonight are the Bells, Deacon Bell and Reverend Bell. Reverend Bell has, you remember from last week perhaps, laryngitis that is enduring, And it's bad enough that the physicians have cautioned that she limit her speech, that she not talk so much for the next several days. And so because of the difficulty of resisting making a comment at a time like this, she's not with us tonight, but our prayers are with her and with Deacon Bell, and we'll hold him accountable for taking good care of her so that her return will be safe and soon. I'm anticipating the arrival soon of Deacon Stokely and Cornelius White. Deacon Stokely has been working late. Deacon Stokely is working on that new tunnel that from the peninsula to the south side, and it's fascinating to me as I watch the speed at which they seem to be going, getting that done. I'm not ready to go through the tunnel yet, but it's fascinating to me how quickly they seem to be going about that, and so he's busy doing that. It's really important work, and we look forward to its completion and pray for his safety as he does that. And then Cornelius will be here. I call Cornelius the voice. When he arrives, he'll be here if they make it tonight. Otherwise, you'll just be stuck with me in real life as we are, and virtually as perhaps we will be before the time goes by. Mary, is your light on already?
Well, I was going to read for you if you need a reader.
You know I need a reader, girl, as soon as I get ready. I have a question, as always I do. What does it take to please God? What does it take to please God? The writer of Hebrews says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. And a person could infer from that is, with faith, it is possible to please God. And so one might conclude that it takes faith to please God. You buy that? Mm-hmm. I don't blame you. I would too, because it's in the Bible. Now, what are some synonyms? Yes, Mary?
It seems to me, I remember Jeremiah telling them that the Lord would prefer they circumcise their heart, which means a change of attitude and behavior. Obedience is what he asked for.
What does that suggest? Heart circumcision and a change.
Introspection and knowledge of his word and a following of his word.
See how she said his twice. So that's an awareness of who God is, and a sense of commitment, a sense of devotion, a sense of responsibility to God. So what are she's given us a couple of synonyms for faith. One is commitment to God. Another, she said, is a sense of responsibility. What are some other synonyms for faith? Another word for faith. What other words might you use for faith to say that? Trust is a good one. What else? Righteousness is a synonym for faith. I don't think so. You think so? Explain to me how you see that. Get yourself a microphone so you can. I'll let you defend yourself, because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not seeing the perspective that you see.
Okay, pretty much. But the reason why I say righteousness, because of course you have to, in order to please God, you have to do that which is righteous, that which is right in His sight, mainly.
Okay, so righteousness.
That's why I say righteousness. Be faithful, righteousness.
So that's
all that good stuff.
Okay, so faithful is another form of the word faith. Obedience is faith. I think those are acts of faith, but I don't think they're the same as faith. Okay. Would you say confidence and righteousness are the same?
Confidence. Well,
I wouldn't. Would you say that trust and righteousness are the same?
No.
But you would say that trust and faith are the same.
Yes.
Yeah. And you would say that trust and confidence are the same.
Yeah.
Mary, I see your light.
No, right now I'm trying to get my camera too back.
Okay. Okay. All right, work on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Does anybody have faith in you?
Yes.
Who has faith in you?
Oddly.
Oddly. Yeah. Don't tell me. I'm just keep it to yourself. Don't tell me. But people have faith in you. Okay. Does anybody have faith in you?
Well, pretty much most people know that if I say something, I'm not just putting it out there. I'm truthful about it.
So what can you offer to people who have faith in you? What do they get for having faith in you? Yes, Mary? Get what?
I'm sorry. Integrity, meaning that they can depend on you to do what you're supposed to do. If you're a husband or wife, paying your share of the bills. If you're a child. Commitment to what you say you're going to do, and children expect a certain amount of security and, reciprocation of love.
Okay, the love, you said commitment, you said, did you say protection?
No, but that's good.
That's included.
Okay, anything else? That people, what can you offer to people who have faith in you? You can offer them your devotion. You can offer them your commitment. You can offer them dedication. You can offer them your support. You can offer them, Lisa would say, favor. You can offer them gifts. You can offer them things. You can offer them things that are valuable to them, things that they value for in exchange, really, for their faith in you. So tonight's lesson comes from Gideon chapter 15, Gideon chapter 7, beginning at verse 15, where we get some ideas about a response to faithful Gideon. And I want to suggest tonight in this conversation that God honors faithful people. That God honors our faith. We have a new voice tonight.
When Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation, he bowed down and worshiped.
Can we see the words too? Oh, you can't do that, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
When
can.
Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation, he bowed down and worshiped. He returned to the camp of Israel and called out, "Get up! The Lord has given the Midianite camp into your hands." Dividing the 300 men into 3 companies, he placed trumpets and empty jars in the hands of all of them, with torches inside. "Watch me," he told them. "Follow my lead, and when I get to the edge of the camp, do exactly as I do. When I and all who are with me blow our trumpets, then from all around the camp blow yours and shout for the Lord and for Gideon." Gideon and the 100 men with him reached the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just after they had changed the guard. They blew their trumpets and broke their jars that were in their hands. The 3 companies blew the trumpets and smashed the jars. Grasping the torches in their left hands and holding their right hands the trumpets they were to blow, they shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." While each man held his position around the camp, all the Midianites ran, crying out as they fled. When the 300 trumpets sounded, the Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other with their swords. The army fled to Beth-shittah toward Zererah as far as the border of Abel-Meholah near Tabbath. Israelites from Naphtali, Asher, and all the Manasseh were called out, and they pursued the Midianites. Gideon sent messengers throughout the hill country of Ephraim, saying, "Come down against the Midianites and seize the waters of the Jordan, ahead of them as far as Beth-barah." So all the men of Ephraim were called out, and they seized the waters of the Jordan as far as Beth-barah. They also captured 2 of the Midianite leaders, Oreb and Zeeb, and they killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb and Zeeb at the winepress of Zeeb. They pursued the Midianites and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeeb to Gideon, who was by the Jordan.
All right. It begins with when Gideon had heard the dream. What was the dream? You remember that from last week?
Yes, last week the Lord told Gideon to go down to the camp, bolster his courage, and listen to what the enemy was saying. And the enemy had dreamed that they had come and crushed them. I think a loaf of bread rolled down the hill to crush them, and they were wiped out.
Yeah,
And Gideon was encouraged by that dream.
Yeah, Gideon and the man with him overheard a conversation between two enemy soldiers. And these two enemy soldiers, one said to the other, "Man, I dreamed that this was a big fight, and it didn't end well for us." And the other soldier responded, "I think that's a sign that Gideon is about to overtake us. Gideon and his army are about to overtake us." Now, Gideon has in his company 300 soldiers, and last week we described the army of the opposition, the Midianites, as being more than they could number, more camels even than Gideon could number. So it was a gigantic force against him. He began with 32,000 soldiers who were prepared more or less to go into battle, but God gave him instructions for how he would go about separating the soldiers. And so he put them twice to a test, that first of all, everybody who wanted to go, everybody who was scared could go home. And a bunch of people, I think 22,000 people left and went home because they were afraid. And then he gave them another test by seeing how they would go about drinking water. And with 300 soldiers, God told Gideon he would win the day, and he would make him victorious. The reason he didn't allow the 32,000 to go to battle is because had they won in those numbers, God had concern that the soldiers would come to the conclusion that by their own might and by their own power they had defeated the enemy, and they would miss the fact that God took them there to demonstrate his own power to them and his faithfulness to them. And so here we find Gideon with a small army. There are 3 companies, 100 each. And even to this day, a lot of companies have 100. A lot of military companies have 100 soldiers in them, and led by one captain. And so Mary read to us that one company was with Gideon. That's his 100, and then there were 2 other companies of 100 each. And they each had instructions about what they would do. But they faced a daunting opposition, and God does something in response to Gideon's faith, and we get the clue to that in these first few verses. How did God reward Gideon's faith? What did God do in response to Gideon's act of faith? This is the Gideon who had fleeced God before. Remember that? Mm-hmm. That's the lesson from 2 weeks ago when Reverend Bell stepped in for Reverend Sampson, who stepped in for me, and then who stepped out. So Reverend Bell stepped in. Yeah. So that was a week when everybody, a whole lot of sick going on. So tonight, Reverend Sampson is here stepping in for Reverend Bell. So that's how we do. So what did God do in response to Gideon's faith? First of all, he gave Gideon wisdom to prepare his army. Mm-hmm. Now, the first thing that Gideon had to be was willing. Gideon had to be willing, and he had to respond. Thank you. And he had to respond to God. So he wasn't all that excited about the idea of getting out there on the battlefield, but he was encouraged, and he was nurtured, and when Gideon made up his mind that he was ready to go for God, to work for God, to do something for God, God gave Gideon what he needed, and I got you, Mary, what he needed next in order to respond. Yes, Mary.
Well, first thing that hit my head was once Gideon responded with action and obedience, God worked on what Gideon couldn't work on, and that was the hearts and minds of the enemy. Yeah. And they end up turning and killing each other.
Well, but even that's true, and we can take it even smaller than that, because when you consider the blessings, when we consider the things that God does for us, it's really pretty easy to go to the end of the story. It's really pretty easy to say that what God did was gave Gideon the victory. But on the way to the victory, he did some things for Gideon. And on the way to our victory, God does some things for us. One thing that God did for Gideon is he gave Gideon a sense of understanding about how he might prepare his army. What will it take for 300 to go against 3,000 or against 30,000? What in the world could you possibly do to prepare such an undersized army to face such a large opposing force? 300 are not supposed to beat 3,000. As a matter of fact, I got you, Mary. In army tactics these days, if an army unit today knew that it was going into combat against 300 people, 300 enemy soldiers, what our soldiers would do is take 900. So 3 to 1. So we don't fight. If they got 300, we take 300. If they had 3,000, if they were following the present-day tactics the way we do, we would take 9,000, so that we'd have 3 times that number. So it doesn't make much sense to see that God takes not only a few soldiers, but a very few soldiers against what should be an unbeatable opposition. And there we have it. So what does it take, first of all, to prepare to do that? And I'm suggesting that what God gave Gideon was the insight, the wisdom to see what must I do, what can I do to prepare these few soldiers to go up against this many soldiers and expect to be effective, successful. Yes, Mary?
Well, I was thinking too, and you're making a good point, because not only that, but he gave this cowardly man back in the earlier chapters the courage to split that small force in 3 ways. So he ended up operating with just 100 men for himself and trusting the others. So that was a strategy that took courage that God has given him. Yeah.
So there's another thing. There's sense enough to delegate, because Gideon sees that he can be effective with 1/3 of these soldiers under his immediate command, and he finds 2 other unnamed leaders, one for each of the other 2 groups of 100. So each company of 100 soldiers has a leader, and they all receive the same instructions, and they all are prepared to do the same thing. So put up verse 16, Mary. Dividing the 300 men into 3 companies, he placed trumpets and empty jars in the hands of all of them with torches inside. If you remember from our conversation last week, the soldiers who decided they were going home left their equipment with the soldiers who were remaining, so that they didn't take their torches and their weapons home with them. They left the trumpets and what else? One more thing.
Jars.
They left those with them, with the 300. so that these 300 men were well armed, and everyone was similarly armed and ready to go out and do battle. So here we see these 300 men prepared and equipped, each equipped in the same way to go and carry the fight. And verse 17 says, I think it's 17, follow me, watch me, do what I do. So here Mary describes him as this timid man early on in the chapter, who was very cautious about moving forward, very uncertain. This is the Gideon who, when God gave him instructions initially, he said, "Are you sure? If this really you now, if it's really you, I want you to make this fleece wet." And I said, "Okay." Gideon got what he asked for, and Gideon did not respond by saying, "Okay, now I believe you." He said, "Okay, now let me see you do it again." Yeah, because that could have been just do. So he tests God, he tries God, and he finds himself uneasy, like Barak was about going up with Deborah, uneasy about going forward. So it's not a surprise, and it's not a shame to be afraid, to be cautious. But Gideon is in the beginning timid and halting in his decision-making process about going into battle. But now he's heard the dream. He's overheard the conversation between the soldiers, and he's feeling his oats. So now he's feeling emboldened. Now he's feeling prepared, and so he says to his soldiers, not man, I want all y'all to fleece the Lord and see if he's gonna be with all of you, because I know he's with me. He says, follow me, watch me, do what I do. So he has gone from being so timid, so cautious. He's gone from that to being very bold. Watch me, follow my lead, do exactly as I do. Now here's 300, there's 299 men trying to watch Gideon so that they can all do what he does. But he gives them instructions so as to prepare them. And you can fight scared, but with courage, a soldier is more likely to attempt something that otherwise that same soldier might not attempt. And but just like fear is catching, so is courage catching. So if you're following somebody who thinks that they're going to succeed, somebody who has confidence in themselves and in you, they have the ability to instill confidence in you in the same way that someone who's fearful has the ability to instill fear in you, make you respond. If you're following a scared leader, can you imagine yourself following a scared leader? Somebody who doesn't have confidence in themselves? Someone you can? I can't. Yeah, I have a hard time imagining myself getting behind somebody who does not think he's going to win. I need a leader who believes that he's going to be effective, that he's going to be successful. I don't need a leader who's afraid to try. I need one who believes enough. So Gideon instills confidence in his soldiers by his own words. Watch me, follow me, and whatever I do, you do that. And we're gonna work this thing out together. Was that verse 18? Yeah, 17. So they had that kind of this is still part of the preparation. This is the wisdom in his mind to prepare. Now the training is over. They've done all the training. They've done all the arming. Everybody's got the right weapons. They've got on the right uniforms, and everybody's ready. Now it's time to get instructions. That's when you put one knee on the ground and take a finger and you say, you go that way, you go that way, you go that way, and I'm gonna go this way, and this is how we're gonna get them. And so Gideon does. When I and all who are with me, that's 99 other people, blow our trumpets, then from all around the camp, that's the other 2 companies, blow your trumpets and shout for the Lord and for Gideon. So here is the impression that the enemy is surrounded. On one side, we get a company of 100 people yelling and screaming and breaking their lamps and sounding their trumpets. And then on 2 other sides, we get another 200 people doing the same thing. And their shouts have a way of disorienting the enemy. So they're already there's fear in the enemy camp, because somebody interpreted the dream as meaning that God was going to give Gideon the victory. And so there's the doubt has already been introduced into the enemy camp, and it's in the same way as it's easier to beat to somebody who you believe you can beat. It's also easy to be beaten if you think you can't win, because you go in the fight scared. But you can't be scared and expect to win. So here's these people in the enemy camp. Gideon already has an idea of what's going to happen when they sound the trumpets, and 300 men yelling out the same thing at the same time from 3 different sides. So they have the impression that they are surrounded, and so maybe that's why there's power in a joyful noise. Maybe that's what puts the devil on the run, is when the sound of praise is sufficiently disorienting for the enemy, and he doesn't know what to do. So he ends up in disarray and confusion. So that's Gideon gives these instructions, and God gives him the wisdom to come up with that kind of language. When how many times in the New Testament does Jesus make statements regarding who he is? I am the bread of life. I am the living water. I am the true vine, and you are the branches. I am resurrection and life. He speaks of himself and his identity. Identity is important, and an awareness of your own identity is important and valuable. Mary spoke earlier of the value of integrity when it comes to pleasing God, when it comes to demonstrating our faith in God. And as much as we understand our own identity, we understand who he is: resurrection and life, bread of life, living water, and so on. The door to the sheepfold, we learn who he is. We identify who we are based on our understanding of who we are not. I'm not living water. I'm not bread of life. I'm not resurrection and the life. So when I recognize who I am, I recognize who he is. I recognize by the same token who I'm not, because I'm none of that. But knowing who I am gives me what I need to put myself in harm's way, because I know that I belong to him. I know that I'm his. I know that he protects me. I know that his promises for me are good. I know that his plans for me are reliable. I know that I can depend upon him, and I know that he has said, as we've said earlier, it takes faith to please God. And when we respond in faith to what he instructs us to do, what he guides us to do, God is pleased with our response, displeased with lack of faith. Without faith, it's not possible to please God. But with faith, you can conclude by the Aristotelian logic that it's possible to please God. And so we please God by our demonstrations of faith. And we demonstrate our faith when we go where he says, go where he sends, and do what he says. And so here we have Gideon with a sense of his identity before God, and he gets the confidence and the wisdom to prepare his army for battle. In verses 19 through 22, what we get is God's giving Gideon courage to lead the army. He's a weak man of his own, of no strength, but God imputes into him the courage to do that. Go ahead, Mary. 19 to 22.
Gideon and 100 men with him reached the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just after they had changed the guard. They blew their trumpets and broke the jars that were in their hands. The 3 companies blew the trumpets and smashed the jars, grasping the torches in their left hand and holding in their right hands the trumpets they were to blow. They shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." While each man held his position around the camp, all the Midianites ran, crying out as they fled. And when the 300 trumpets sounded, the Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other and their swords. The army fled to Bethshittah towards Zerah, as far as the border of Abel Meholah near Tabas.
It was the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
They were drowsy. No doubt some were drunk. And they had been not expecting war. The time to attack is when the enemy doesn't expect it. That's why the devil attacks us when we seem like we're doing so well, because when we're doing so well, we don't expect to be attacked. And when we don't expect to be attacked, we are often not prepared for the attack, for the assault. But when we expect to be attacked, then we're always prepared. And so here's an army. The second armored division used to have as their motto, "We own the night." And I was in the second armored division at that time, and we did much of our training at night, because we made up our minds that nobody could beat us at night. They couldn't see their way around as well as we could. They couldn't maneuver in the dark as well as we could. They couldn't maintain control and discipline as well as we could. We thought we were better than anybody else in the army in our army at night, and better than any other enemy that we might oppose at night. We own the night. The nighttime can be very confusing, not only because of the numbers of people you have sleeping and the few people who are up watching. That's what you do. You set out a guard, tell everybody, most people go to sleep, so that when morning comes and it's time for a reveille, everybody can get up at the same time and everybody be ready, everybody be rested. So you leave a handful of people to watch. Watch and make sure that no fire breaks out. Watch and make sure that no enemy sneaks into the camp. Watch out and make sure that nobody takes you by surprise. But most other people are sleeping. And the middle of the night is better than the early evening, because the early evening they're still alert and they're still watching, they're still wide awake. But if you give them time to nod, give them time to doze, give them time to make up their bedrolls and to turn in for the night and to go to sleep, and to wake them in the middle of the night, you're likely to catch them disoriented. That's another time that that the devil is likely to catch us when we slumber, when we sleep on. We have this expression that's been going around the last few years: don't sleep on so and so, or don't sleep on Satan, because if you do, he will sneak up on you. And in this instance, when Gideon and his army did as they were instructed to do, the enemy soldiers were so disoriented in the dark that they ended up taking each other out. They were running and screaming and, oh Lord, where are these soldiers coming from? And the lights all around them, lights on the perimeter, 100 lights on that side and 100 lights on that side and 100 lights on that side. And when you wake up in confusion, 100 lights might look like 1,000. And when you're fighting on the Lord's side, he can make 100 lights look like 1,000 or 10,000. So who knows what they saw? What we know is that when they saw what they saw and heard what they heard, their reaction was panic. And when they panicked, they began to destroy one another. They began, just whoever is getting, I don't want nobody that close to me in the dark when we're in battle. So when they find themselves, somebody brushing up against you, you take your sword out and you cut that one. You don't know who you're cutting. You're just cutting anybody get close to you. If you can imagine this thousands of men waking up in the middle of the night. It's dark, and they awaken to the loud sound. They get the sense that they are surrounded. They're in a valley, so that the sound is amplified in the valley because of the sound bouncing off the mountainside, and so it sounds like more people than there are. And because of the strategy that has been employed, and because of the fact that God guarantees victory for Gideon and his army, the enemy soldiers end up taking each other out and then running and finding places to hide. What's the lesson for us in that?
I think it's about being prepared.
You got to use your microphone, baby.
I think it's about being prepared.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, listening to this text, it's kind of bringing me to the 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins.
Mm-hmm.
That parable
Mm-hmm.
about having the oil of your lamps being trimmed.
Mm-hmm.
It's about being prepared.
Right.
But more so, the whole process of the dream and the way that the Holy Spirit is working with Gideon, it's also showing that when God is with you,
Mm-hmm.
that's the majority.
Mm-hmm.
If Scripture says where you're gathered, together in His name, He's in the midst of them.
Yeah, right.
So it's about the importance of His presence and following His plan
Yeah.
to the letter.
Yeah. You agree with her? You got to agree on your microphone so everybody will know. Yes, Mary.
I'm so in it the same way Lisa is, because God often does things that appear frightening, and you wonder if it's really Him because it looks so crazy. But He can do things like bring fear into the heart of the enemy. They're seeing an entirely different playbook than when you're seeing. So while you feel small, you got to remember how big God is and just do what He says do, because that's the only clear path to victory.
You were going to say something? Oh, you were going to agree with Lisa? All right. Well, Lisa, next time, just tell me you're speaking for everybody. All right? So I'll know. I won't waste your time.
They both made it.
Yeah. So he doesn't have the 32,000 soldiers that he started out with. He only has 300. But he has the courage to take what God gave him to work with. He started out with 32,000. That's how many soldiers he managed to muster. But he didn't fight with the number that he managed to muster. He went to war with the number that God sent him to fight with. It reminds me of Saul trying to give David his clothes. Fight here, take my shield, take my armor, use my sword, take my stuff. David didn't go with the armor that Saul had been appropriate for Saul. Rather, he needed his own stuff because God had proven God's self with the slingshot. I call it a Hebrew shooter, and rocks. So God proved himself that way, and Gideon learned the lesson, and Gideon went forth and with courage, which is a new thing for Gideon, and he seems to be growing more courageous as we go through this. So the safest thing for the Midianite army to do is run. So they think they're being about to be overtaken by a superior force, because at one time, no doubt they were aware of this large army that had amassed and was prepared to fight against them. You remember Gideon's army was on the high ground, and so they were able to look down on the Midianite army, and because of the superiority of Gideon's position, it's difficult for the Midianites to determine how many people are really up there, because they can't see up. But Gideon and his army can see down. And so knowing that there could be a whole bunch of soldiers up there, and knowing that there's a bunch of us, and if they're attacking us, it must be a bunch of them. But that was before they learned that one can chase 1,000. Exactly. And two can put 10,000 to flight. So Gideon, God favors, honors Gideon's faith by giving him wisdom, and God honors Gideon's faith by giving him courage. And Gideon responds to God's leading, and he takes the fight to the enemy. And then he gets this opportunity to engage a superior force in verses 23 to 25, Mary.
Israelites from Naphtali, Asher, and all the Manasseh were called out, and they pursued the Midianites. Gideon sent messengers throughout the hill country of Ephraim, saying, "Come down against the Midianites and seize the waters of the Jordan ahead of them as far as Beth-barah." So all the men of Ephraim were called out, and they seized the waters of the Jordan as far as Beth-barah. They also captured two of the Midianite leaders, Oreb and Zeeb. They killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb, and Zeeb at the winepress of Zeeb. They pursued the Midianites and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeeb to Gideon, who was by the Jordan.
My. Here he starts with 300 and routs the enemy. And once the enemy is on the run, he summons his boys from the other tribes, from some other tribes. Get them, y'all. They coming your way, because the Midianites have now scattered, and they are running, no doubt, in every direction. They're disorganized and disoriented, and they're just trying to get away. The text says they flee, and as they flee, Gideon summons the other tribes to seize them. Don't let them get away. Don't let the Midianites out of our grasp. And so he presses the fight now to all the way to the end. He does not allow them just to leave and give up the fight. Now he keeps on pressing. Yes, Reverend.
Crazy thought. I'm getting it together. Go on.
This is the Reverend over here writing a sermon. Yeah. So he does not allow them to simply disappear, to go away and rearrange themselves. Instead, he calls upon his friends, his fellow Israelites, to come from other tribes to capture and kill the enemy that they do. This victory becomes a landmark in Israel's history in the same way that crossing the Jordan, or crossing the Red Sea is a landmark in their histories. The experience at Rephidim when they were worshiping the calf and the ground is opened and so many of them end up losing their lives. So these markers, these become phenomenal moments in the history of Israel, so that it's when they begin to talk about major events in their history. This is one of the major events that transpires and memorable events in the history of the nation Israel, because it recalls the time and the date and the circumstances during which God gave Israel victory in some uncertain circumstances. And once again, God proves himself. God proved God's self to God's people by his fidelity. So I ask you about how you reward people who place their faith in you. Now, how does God reward people who place our faith in him? And the answer is much the same as you answered when I asked you about how you reward people who put their faith in you. You keep your word. You find yourself committed to them. You find yourself devoted to them. You find yourself wanting to bless them. You show them favor. You offer them gifts. You want to be kind to them. And in the same way, when we are faithful to God, God responds in much the same way. Yes, Mary?
I was sitting here listening to you and thinking about when Gideon's probably, I don't know how well known or how well respected he was as a general, but when he sent those 32,000 people away, all but 300, they must have thought he had lost his mind. It's not always easy to follow the Lord. It don't always make sense to the people around you. But when he sent the word out, the 300 people had him coming your way. They didn't imagine the faith that built in all the rest of the Israelites that said, okay, this is God, let's get him.
I like that, Mary. Mary said, let's get him. Yeah. I don't know what might have been on the minds of all the 31,700 men who went home. But that's how many went home. They now the ones who were scared, when they say you can leave if you're scared, they say, all right, I'm out. And they left. So we got an idea what happened to them. But something different happens when you know you got the enemy on the run. It's like a rout in a basketball game. When you up by 30 and ain't but 3 minutes left, the scrubs get in. Everybody get in the game. People who never play get in the game when you so far ahead that you can't lose. And it's perhaps difficult for a Christian, for the church to imagine putting the devil on the run. And therefore, responding not out of fear, but out of confidence, responding with faith in God that we will be victorious, that we've already got the enemy on the run, and that having the enemy on the run is no time for us to keep everybody with the uniform clean. It's just time for everybody to get in the game. And perhaps it takes that kind of confidence. It takes a sense that I'm going to be on the winning team. When I know we gonna win. Now all the other games, when I say we won, I ain't even play. But we won because I had on the uniform. I sat on the bench. I was one of the so we 10-0. But when I get in the game. So I'm gonna find some way. If it's basketball, I'm gonna score 1 point, block one shot, still. Make one side. I got to get into stats. And it's the desire to make the stats when you know you've got the enemy on the ropes. So when you get, I say that for Minister Abdullah, the resident kickboxer, when she put the enemy on the ropes, and she know that's the next thing is a roundhouse, and you put him out, then she'd be that like what's that guy's name on the Texas Ranger, Walker, Texas Ranger. See, you turn like Shireen, turn like Walker, Texas Ranger, and give him a roundhouse kick. I will show you how to do it, but I got that bad legs, and I don't want no trouble. Yeah. So when it's I think that the church benefits from a lesson that God honors faith in God. Benefits from recognizing that when Gideon made up his mind that he was talking to God and God was talking to him, that he would therefore do what God said do. Then God opened Gideon's mind and he could see things that he could not see before. He acquired the wisdom to prepare his soldiers for battle. He knew what to say to them. When Gideon made up his mind that he was going forward to do what he was told to do, God put some stuff in his spine, and where Gideon had been more or less spineless, where he lacked courage, God gave him courage, confidence and courage that because God promised victory, he could expect to win. When the church comes to a place where we're not afraid, I think I talked about this in our meeting Sunday with preachers, and it may have been in the sermon Sunday. The difference between responding to a challenge from God in terms of what we don't have or what we can't do. That's the easy way to do. We could never afford to do that. It's like this. Like when we started talking about the face of the future. The early response to that was, we don't need it. And the second response was, we can't afford it. And then there was COVID. And everything was different. We needed it, and we managed to afford it. We don't have a whole lot of different people than we had then. We don't have a whole lot more money than we had then. But nothing that needed to be done has gone undone. Everything that we needed to do, except turn on that light right there, has been done. So yeah, he will. Yeah, he will. But it takes if I'm on this side praying that we get it done, and look at Mary go. Mary, did you speak to it, Mary? She touched it. Yeah. So I'm pulling us in this direction, and somebody else is pulling us in this direction. Where we end up is right here. You can't go forward and you can't go backward. But Gideon figured out. Gideon trusted God, who said, you don't need 32,000. You need what I say you need. Right. And he stepped out with 300 soldiers and did this. And God honored Gideon's faith in him by creating for Gideon an environment or an opportunity in which Gideon could thrive and accomplish what God told him he could do. He won't put you in a place and give you an assignment and leave you to do it without his help. But you got to get started. And without faith, you'll never start. You'll rather look at yourself and instead of talking about what you have, you'll complain and moan about what you don't have. But you can't win with what you don't have. But with God on your side, you can't lose. God bless you. Thank you so much for being a part of our virtual classroom tonight. And for those of you who are here in real life, we are in prayer for our absent and recovering members and pray to see them on the battlefield again momentarily. I'd also remind you that on this Sunday morning at 11 o'clock, we'll be back together in the same space in this same way. I call it the same black time and same black manner, same black place. And I hope you'll join us on Facebook live or on YouTube. Lots of people pull up on the parking lot and they enjoy the fellowship of the saints, and they can see and hear one another. And we're at the place where people are returning to the sanctuary, and we're happy to receive you every Sunday. We ask people to bring evidence that you've been vaccinated and make sure you wear your mask if you're over 2 years old, so that we can do what we do. We're coming back, and we're trusting God to bring us back, and we're doing it in a way that God calls us to do. And we'd like you to be a part of that. So thank you for being a part tonight. And I pray to see you again or to be seen by you again real soon. God bless you and good night.